To kick off, so I'd like to introduce Phil McKay. He is the CEO of Engage Events, who is producing this webinar today.
Thank you so much, Amy, and thank you all of you for joining us. We have people from all over North America, Canada, and throughout the United States to join us on this very important topic. It's a three-part series, and today is the first part, but it's gaining value and driving business innovation. And this is sponsored by SAP and Illumiti. And today's exciting kickoff is the power of automation. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce our two main speakers today. On the customer side, Stephen Baird, Program Manager from Spartan Controls, and the session leader is Glen Moffat from SAP, Vice President of SAP. And I'm going to turn it over to both of you folks to introduce yourself a little bit more, and then we'll get into some questions.
Thanks, Phil.
Perfect. Stephen, please go ahead.
Thanks. So I'm Stephen Baird. I'm the SAP Program Manager at Spartan Controls. I've been implementing and supporting SAP for about 26 years now. And we're a Emerson Impact Partner for Western Canada. And we've been on this SAP journey for about 3 years. So excited to share our story with you later. Great.
Great. And my name is Glen Moffat, again with SAP. It's been my pleasure to work at SAP for 16 years. I will tell you an absolutely true story. The very first day I started at SAP, in fact, before I even got to sit down at my desk in the lobby, I met the CEO of our really well-respected partner, Illumiti. And I've known the folks at Illumiti all that time. It's been a great partnership, and I'm delighted to be able to participate on a call like this one with them, as well as with Stephen and with Spartan. So hello, everyone.
And we're pleased to have you both here with us. So I'm gonna go right in. I will say though, if anybody has any questions, just please enter them into the chat, and we will get to them. So I have a few questions that we've keyed up. I'm gonna go to you, Stephen, first. It's a two-part question. Can you give us the background of your organization and your role within it, and also give us a summary of Spartan Controls within the SAP footprint today?
Yeah, no problem. So Spartan Controls, we've been around for nearly 60 years now, and we're a Emerson Impact Partner. So we're a reseller for Emerson, Fisher, Rosemont products across Western Canada. We historically have had home-built ERP systems, and about 5 years ago, we reached the point where scalability was a problem, supportability, and it wasn't going to be a platform to really support our growth into this digital world. So we started on a project to implement SAP. We went live on S4 1610 in April 2019 and have been evolving and growing our footprint ever since. We did an upgrade to 1909 in March last year. So that feels like a good stable version that's working well for us. As we've started down this journey, I know there was a comment earlier about how do we keep everything together? Do we go best of breed or do we keep single source? And we took the view that because it is such an integrated world, we wanted to see, can we make an SAP first approach work? So within our footprint, we have CRM. So we have C4C Cloud on the sales side. We have Analytics Cloud on the reporting and analytics side, along with BW. We've just implemented Field Service Management, which has been a really successful addition to our footprint. And we're in the process of implementing SuccessFactors and CPQ Configure Price Quote right now, which is due to go live later next year. So we're really looking to expand that SAP footprint to minimize integration challenges, to keep the single source of data, and also continue working with our valued partner Illumiti.
Great, thank you. So Glenn, there's talk about ERP and its renaissance, so to speak. Would you like to elaborate on this?
Yeah, actually, I would. And it's funny, Stephen, I think you picked the perfect time to refresh your systems, to be honest. And I say this as someone who's been in the industry for now, not 16 years, but actually getting closer to 30. As I look back, and it's a little frightening. I've now, I think, been in this industry in total, if you count all of them, about 5 decades. So I have a long-term view of this, and yeah, I really do think Renaissance is the right word. I think, Phil. If you look at what's been going on with ERP systems in the last little while, specifically last 5-6 years, they've been changing. And they've been sneaking these changes up on everybody. So ERP, I think a lot of the concepts, they go back 50 years. They literally go back to the 70s, to the 80s. They, most of the packages that we looked out there across the 80s and 90s, they kind of all did very similar things. And that trend continued for a very long time. But what we're seeing now is with the advent of in-memory databases like HANA, you can start to do things you couldn't really do before. And we're starting to see that really impacting the design and functionality of ERP systems. They really are, I think, not the same as they were 5-10 years ago. So I think, Stephen, you picked a perfect time to refresh, because you're just getting onto that next wave and you're going to ride the curve forward, taking advantage of all the wonderful things that you can start to do with a modern ERP system these days.
Glenn, a follow-up question too, for everybody in the audience. From a business and financial standpoint, which is better? Is cloud better? Is it a better option?
Well, I think that's a very personal question. It's almost like asking what's better, Mac or PC. You're going to have strong views on either side, but I'll give you my view, and I'm not going to try to argue the technical merits of either case. What I'm going to do is I'll try to channel Steve Jobs, if I can be so bold. I don't have the black turtleneck today, but I'll try to do that.
I do.
Oh, you do. Very good. Nice. Well done. So between the two of us, Phil, we'll have to do this. But he got asked a very similar question quite some time ago. Again, you're looking back in maybe 20 plus years ago, and he got asked the same question. But is object-oriented programming, this new thing that was emerging at the time, is it better? And or is it better to do the old way? And he basically, rather than descend into all the technical discussion, he said, yes, it is. It is just better. It allows you to do things much more easily than you could with a previous approach. And that's the way I feel about cloud. You can go through and add up pennies and compare this option versus that option. But I think what the last 14 or so years that I've been working with cloud ERP systems, if it taught us anything, is that if you're counting just the pennies of the cost of the software, you might be missing a bigger picture. And the value of a cloud-based system is that is going to free up what everyone is kind of describing as their number 1 or 1A priority. It's going to free up that precious technical resource in the IT organization. We all know how hard it is to find good people, to retain them, to get them to keep working. They're looking for meaningful work, and if you are just having them keep the lights on by putting a patch on top of a system, then maybe there's better things you could have them doing. But that one is, if that's 1 or 1A, the other twin priority we're seeing that's driving people to the cloud, and I really do mean driving them, is the notion of cybersecurity. Nobody wants to have a bad experience. Nobody wants to be in the newspaper. And if you are essentially subscribing to a cloud ERP system, you're subscribing to the provider's security measures. At SAP, we take that obviously very seriously. We have a staff of several thousand people on a follow-the-sun basis. It's the best cloud engineers in the world, working with the best cloud engineers in the world at the Googles, at the Microsofts, at the Amazons, at the Alibabas, and other parts of the world. So we try to make our systems as compliant as possible, as secure as possible. And if you're the CIO and you're trying to make this decision, My advice is, yes, look at the pennies, absolutely count the pennies, but look at those great big elephants in the room, the security and the deployment of resources. And a lot of CIOs have run to the same conclusion that, yeah, maybe this cloud thing, that is the right thing. It is better. So that, again, is one more opinion. Let me put that out in the universe, and we can have a debate about it.
That's great. Thank you, Glenn. And Stephen, I'm going to give you also kind of a controversial question too. You know, we're talking about, you know, digital and digital transformation, and that means something different to, it could be different to every organization. So the question I have for you is, how has your business adjusted to changing digital landscape and market challenges? And have these obstacles led to new investments in technology?
Yeah, no, good question. So like the rest of the planet, the last couple of years threw up some unexpected challenges. And one of those was remote working. So there was a big drive to see how do we best support remote working. And some of the SAP technologies around mobile, around Fiori instead of SAP GUI, we're looking at leveraging some of those technologies. As we look at the digital transformation, it's how do we better support our customers? How do we better integrate to maximize that flow of information between the organizations? How do we leverage things like the asset intelligence network that some of our customers are using so we can make sure they've got the latest up-to-date information on the products that we're providing and servicing? So it's really looking at leveraging that technology away from the old concept of you have a desktop, you sit in front of it in your office from 9 to 5 days a week, to do we then have access through Fiori in a mobile device? How do we get away from the rekeying of invoices and have optical character recognition and scanning and so on? So it's really looking at how do we work smarter, not harder, leveraging the power of technology that's available today.
So adding on to that question, what processes did you take to identify the right technologies and solutions to address these business pain points?
So as I mentioned at the start, one of the directions I've tried to take was look at an SAP first mindset. Not that we have to go with an SAP solution for any area, but we need to at least consider it. We need to look at what is the fit gap. How well does the out-of-the-box product meet our requirements or perceived requirements, and then look at the commercial side of it. And if those two look like they're going to meet our needs, then we move ahead with that SAP solution. What I didn't want to do is just jump to whatever the flavor of the month was product-wise, and then find we have a mix of products that all need different skill sets supporting them, different vendors supporting them. We then have to integrate all of these separate products together. And then as soon as we upgrade one of them, then all the interfaces have to be updated. And it's trying to avoid taking on technical debt and trying to keep things streamlined and simplified by keeping within that one technology stack of SAP where it makes sense.
Not to throw you off your maybe your next question, Phil, but I just want to pile in on that. You reminded me, Stephen, of a customer I encountered in the Western United States that did what you just described. They were a technology-oriented company, had a lot of really smart engineering folks, and had given them permission to go off and create point solutions for every little thing. It was really amazing. By the time we got to them, they had a core ERP system and 37 mission critical point solutions attached to it. They were just spinning in a circle. Just everything they were doing was to keep all those plates up in the air without anything crashing down. So yeah, we see a lot of what you just described, and the approach you're describing now is a nice way to try to avoid that if you can possibly help it.
And it's also looking at the sum of the whole versus the sum of the individual parts, because one advantage that we're realizing of this approach is that working with John here, we're working with Illumiti. whether you're the prime or like FSM, we get other resources involved. We've got that one point of contact, that one continuity. So you don't end up with this going on between different vendors. There's the one hand to shake that we're working collectively together to maximize the value of this investment in our technology.
If I could just add, folks, I'm John Robinson, VP of Project Delivery at Illumiti. I'll add that it's one throat to choke as well, right? So if things don't go exactly correctly, you've got one solution integrator, and we obviously advocate for an SAP first strategy, but we help evaluate if there is something that gives a competitive advantage or reduces risk in a point solution, and it makes sense. But holistically, we advocate obviously for an SAP first strategy, and that's what we've tried to support here at Spartan.
I have a follow-up question to that too, for you both, Stephen and John. What are the critical factors that you can share to measure the success of this project? And were these met? Were the expectations exceeded?
It's a yes, and it's an ongoing journey. So we had the initial SAP S4 implementation that sort of started the process. And then since then, we've been adding on additional products, additional functionality. The most recent one was field service management, which was a roaring success. And there are a number of factors behind that. One, we had really engaged senior leadership from the organization. So not just letting it support, they were absolutely committed to its success. We had key resources that were freed up from the business to be dedicated to the project, to really be involved in every workshop, in every bit of testing, to truly understand the tool, not just how it works, but why we configured it to work that way, and getting the right resources to bear. Working with Illumiti, we actually worked with SAP Consulting to get the resources that actually wrote the product in the first place involved in that project. So we had the right direction from the business, the right ownership and tone from the top. We had the right technical resources brought to bear, but also working with the basis resources, the ABAP resources that already knew our environment. So we weren't having to re-educate new resources on how our system works and how we pull orders out of the CS module. They already knew that. So we already had half of the puzzle already in place. And then it was just bringing the right resources to bear.
Yeah, I would also add that, it was actually your directive, Stephen, that we evaluate the out-of-the-box functionality, right? Rather than take an approach of identify gaps without actually using the software. It was built the way it was built for a reason, understand the reasons, use it as is. And sometimes that means adapting the business process to change, to use the software as designed, as opposed to modifying the software to adapt to an existing business process. So that was, I think one of the fundamental factors in making it so successful, not just FSM, but projects in general.
I completely agree with that. And I said, I've been doing this for many decades now. The old way was you map out exactly how you do things today in the system that you want to replace, and then you look to see how closely SAP can match that. And then wonder why you don't get massive leap forwards in productivity and so on. So with FSM, we started off, we didn't do how we do it today. How does FSM do it? Look at the gaps. We started off vanilla field service management. Why won't this work for us? And went through each standard process and asked that question. Why can't we make this work? And as a result, we managed to implement the product quickly with little to no customizations or tweaking. And we got an ROI within the 12 months.
That's a key factor. You're getting benefit from the system sooner, right? Experience in the system. If something needs to be changed because it's not quite there, the fit, you've at least had the experience on the system before you make that decision, as opposed to the old traditional, the approach was, as Stephen said, trying to identify where the pieces of the software don't work. This is an approach to implementing SAP that we at Illumiti advocate in general with SAP best practices. Show us why what doesn't work for you. And if there's a reason why we need to change the system to, as I said earlier, differentiate ourselves from the competition, reduce risk, that's where you spend the money on customizing the software. But evaluate and really give the core system, the out-of-the-box functionality, a fair shake before you make those decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Understand what truly is our secret sauce. Because I know we all think we're special, but how we pay our electricity bill or order product, is that truly what makes us unique in the marketplace? If it doesn't, SAP have invested billions in leading practice for these standard functions. Why wouldn't we use them wherever possible and focus our budget and our efforts on those areas of the business that truly are what makes us unique in the marketplace? And that's where we really wanted to focus our customizing spend if needed. Now, it's easier to say than to do. And now we're 3 years into the S4 journey. We're actually going back and rolling back some of these customizations, because where we thought we needed to be different, actually, now we've lived with it. You know what? The standard actually looks like it'll be okay. And the value of going standard, everything downstream works. Now, I'll give a very quick example. In our material master, there's a standard field for manufacturer's part number, but it's 40 characters long. Well, some of our manufacturer's part numbers are up to 100 characters long. So we reused free text 6 as manufacturer's part number. Perfect, works great. Except that isn't a default on the search fields. That isn't a default screen on any printouts or any reports. So you don't just make that change in one area, it's all of the downstream consequences that also need to be touched as a result of that one simple, seemingly innocuous change. So it's really trying to look at, do we really need to do that? Because there's ongoing cost of making these customized changes.
Stephen, I'm going to ask you one follow-up question too. You mentioned a couple of times resources, and right now, as we all know, resources are, we're so lucky to have the resources that we have and find new resources. Who are the key executive stakeholders that are instrumental for the success of a project like this?
So it's a very simple one in my experience. It's the tone from the top. So it's who at the top of the organization is responsible for this investment, for this project, and good or bad, warts and all, they need to be the cheerleader for it. They need to be supportive. They need to be communicating the benefits that we're expecting and are realizing from this investment. If it's viewed as a technology project, you're doomed from the very start. This is a business transformation initiative that happens to have a technology component. It is absolutely not an IT project.
Great. Thank you for that. Glen, I'm going to come back to you on your opinion of that cloud is a better option. And I think many of the executives on this call, including myself, 100% agree with you. But so, cloud is a direction that most of the organizations are going to. How painless is it? Is it a move, and how efficient is it in the long run and cost effective?
I think when you look at the let's take that in two parts. The initial move is the initial move, regardless of whether you're going to a cloud solution or whether you're going to a next upgrade of an ERP. There is some cost there. There is some time there. I don't want to sugarcoat or minimize that. But the nice thing about once you get to the cloud world is the degree to which it becomes somebody else's problem. There's a security issue that's just arisen, that becomes somebody else's problem. There's a new patch that's become available from the software provider, that's someone else's problem. The hyperscaler has released a new generation of hardware that they procured from their suppliers, and it has some cost advantages to that. Again, somebody else's problem. You are subscribing in the cloud to the solutions to those everyday mundane productivity sucking problems. It is just now basically an ERP system showing up in your browser, your user's browser, and all of those types of things just go away because they are part of the subscription. And I mentioned it earlier about the notion of security being a big priority. I can't emphasize that enough. The number of people who will be just looking for a new system to standing up somewhere on any platform anywhere with the hopes of hacking it's an astonishing number. So what you definitely want is to make sure that whatever you're subscribing to has got the very best engineers in the world working on that issue and working on it on a continuous basis, because those hackers never sleep. So that's the part of it that gets easier going forward. In my prior life, I actually took a short break from the software industry. I was out in the real world alongside Stephen and other customers as a COO of a manufacturing company. And I will tell you, the scariest days I've had in the 4 years I did that is when the servers were down, once due to a security event. It is nowhere you ever want to be. It is one of those horrible moments in business you never want to experience. So that is the kind of thing that makes the cloud, use the word painless. Nothing's painless, but it takes some of those pains away and allows you to have a little bit better sleep at night.
So, we're the people that are on the call, we have retail, we have financial, we have manufacturing, mining. How does SAP enable and drive innovation across all industries, given how different and diverse these industries are?
I can answer that with one word: money. Money. We spend an absurd amount of money on this. SAP is the 800-pound gorilla in this space. We spend more money on R&D than some of our competitors have in revenue, whether it's cloud revenue or whether it's on-premise revenue. It is just an absurd amount of money. It is billions of dollars a year. But that's just kind of part of the picture. How do you support 28 different industries and keep them all at the leading edge? Well, with the R&D investment, but also with acquisitions. If you were to add up what SAP has spent in the last 10 years between organic and merger and acquisition type R&D, the number is $60 billion. That's how you do it. And that is all intended to basically pay off for people like Spartan and other customers across all these different industries, so that they don't have to make those investments for themselves. They don't have to do the customizations for themselves. They can basically expect their ERP system to keep them at the leading edge.
That's a great answer.
If I could add, Phil,
go ahead.
Sorry, if I just add to what Glen's saying. As a consulting partner and SAP solution integrator, we have our own R&D, and we've worked with Glen quite a bit in the past. We spend a significant amount of money on evaluating new technologies in the SAP space, ensuring they're the right fit for our clients and our customers, and ensuring that our consultants are enabled in using the technology correctly. So it's not just that the number's nowhere near what Glen's quoting as far as SAP spend, but proportionately, we're looking at how we push our capabilities forward as well with new technologies and in constantly investing. And I think that's benefits Spartan. It benefits all of our customers when we are on the leading edge as well as a consulting firm.
Well, I would assume all the investment that the partners are making is going to save the customer money over the long run also. Stephen, I'm going to come back to you. Just all technology is moving so fast. It's lightning fast these days.
Yep.
And so how do you calibrate and adjust your transformation journey, given new challenges and the new technologies that are coming up along the way?
Yeah, it's, as you say, the rate of change of technology is greater now than any time in human existence. and keeping on top of it is a challenge. One of the ways I find is Sapphire. So Sapphire from the SAP world is a good way of keeping on top of what's going on, but also webinars like this and also direction from Illumiti. I don't know what I don't know, and I'm focused on the day-to-day running of the SAP world within Spartan. These guys, SAP and keeping abreast of what's coming down the pipeline, you know our business, you know our challenges. So that's why we're sort of working in partnership to give us the direction on things we need to look at. And FSM was a good example of that.
So with that, what's next for you and Spartan?
So what's next for us? We're due to go live with SuccessFactors later this year, which is our HR system. The big one is our configure price quote CPQ implementation, which is our multi-BU pricing and quoting for the complex multi-million projects. That's going to be going live, at least phase one, early next year. So it's really then getting cradle to grave, the entire business run through the SAP machine so that we have visibility. On the CRM side, we have demand coming in. We have all of the quotes that are in action, in process. They're all visible in the system. So we have one view of the truth, and we're just trying to build on that. We're also looking at rolling out more mobile. So how do we get people detached from their desktop, from their desk, particularly in the warehouses? So looking at warehouse management, looking at QR codes, mobile apps for scanning, automatically updating transfer orders and so on, so we can really streamline the movement of goods within the warehouse and stop people having to scribble things down, then go back to their desk and then rekey them in. We want to give them the ability to do that in real time on a mobile device through scanning the QR code. So it's really removing people from the shackles of the desktop and actually allowing them to do their work, to access the information they need through multiple devices from anywhere that they choose to work.
So totally automating what you're doing and into the future.
Yeah, we want to try and leverage the technology. We've even got a few RPA bots out there that are going out to supplier websites, getting updates on delivery dates, coming back into SAP and updating that. So we no longer have to do those phone calls each day to see have there been any changes on when I'm due to get my product, particularly in the current market with the supply chain challenges we all experience. That's saved a huge amount of time and means that on a daily basis, we have accurate information on expected delivery times. So that's really automation coming to the front and really starting to deliver value for us.
That's an awesome example of having the machines do what the machines are good at and have the humans do what the humans are good at. I love hearing stories like that.
So that kind of really tees up my final question before we open it up to the audience. And this is for you, Glen. With AI, analytics, and sustainability embedded in S/4HANA ERP, what does that mean to the businesses that are represented here?
I think Stephen might have already answered that. When you look at the productivity that those things create, I think the title of this session is The Power of Automation. And I'll tie it back to my earlier comment about this being a bit of a renaissance in the world of ERP. We're embedding artificial intelligence bots throughout the S/4HANA system, and they're not artificial intelligence like we've seen in the movies where Arnold Schwarzenegger comes bursting through the wall. It's not that kind of a thing. They're very small, they're very narrow, they solve a very small problem, but they do it at or better human levels than human levels. So the RPA to go and collect purchase order acknowledgements is one example. Field service management is another one. Would you believe we snuck an artificial intelligence agent into that thing to help with scheduling? And what does it mean to business? You asked that question, Phil. Well, a lot of it is people don't even realize this is happening. That's why we sometimes throw the Renaissance word around. There are over 230 of those use cases in the S/4HANA system these days. We have a robot that can review purchase orders to see if materials are being ordered and it should be added to a catalog. We can propose a material group that new material should go in. We can then review the catalog using an AI. We can have someone monitor supplier discounts, or an AI monitor supplier discounts instead of a person. It's in HR to eliminate biases in applicants, applicant tracking. It's in sales to do a forecast automatically. And every time I say that, the salespeople just light up and say, "You mean I'd never have to go to another forecast meeting again?" It's like, no, you send the robot. They're everywhere. They're in manufacturing. They're all over the place. And because they're they solve such very small problems, they've just kind of been creeping up on us. And now there's quite a lot of them. So that's where I think you're going to see the impact in business, is that people are going to be taking these productivity gains. First of all, there's a cost savings to be had there, obviously, but they're also freeing people up from these really drudgerous tasks, this really tedious work that no one wants to do, and letting it go off and do some higher value work. So those are the big impacts that I see. Just a really quick one on sustainability. SAP has been a pioneer in this space for the better part of 10 years. We have a solution out there called Sustainability Control Tower. Because we are such a global organization, we are sensitive to regulations no matter where they appear. They are absolutely leading the way in Europe in this area. And some of the just the basic reporting requirements for sustainability that are emerging are just going to be amazing. They will help customers to actually understand the impact that they're having, and then what steps they can take to manage or reduce the carbon impact they're having on the environment. So it's all stuff that's kind of in the ERP system already, but a lot of it is lying there dark, and it's finally getting activated, and people are beginning to take advantage of this functionality and beginning to do not just the profitable thing or the more employee engaging thing, but they're also doing the sustainable thing. And we love seeing that as well.
That's great. Thank you, Glenn. So I'm going to open it up to the audience now. If you do have any questions, we have a few already in the chat. Please just put them in the chat and we'll try to get to them. So the first one is, we want to understand how to manage cloud resources and contain costs. So Glenn, you want to take that?
Sure. The first thing to do is, I think, to take an inventory, just to make sure that you don't get any surprises. And that's I'll just say that purely from a resource point of view. Make sure you're very, very, very clear on who is doing what. If you're evaluating a cloud ERP system, how much is being done by the ERP provider, by the SAP in this case? How much is being done by the integrator, Illumiti in this case? And then how much remains your responsibility? A lot of it, in our world in SAP, we have a very clear document. It's kind of ridiculous, actually. It's about 400 little lines on an Excel spreadsheet that tells you who's responsible for what. So that's my first best advice, is don't get surprised by that. The other one is to take your time as you're evaluating where you're deploying in the cloud. In the SAP world, we actually don't have these kinds of additional charges, but in the large hyperscale public cloud providers, if I can call them that, the people that you can go off and just purchase raw infrastructure from, they have costing models that sometimes will creep up on you and surprise you. So be very thorough. Look for things like egress or ingress charges, that the amount that you're going to pay to move data in and out of their systems. Just go in with your eyes wide open and make sure that you don't get surprised. Those are probably my two biggest pieces of advice from both a resource and a infrastructure point of view.
Stephen, John, you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think also that.
I think so. Excellent.
Okay.
Glenn nailed it.
Great.
I took all the oxygen out of the room. Sorry, guys.
Next question is, what percentage of sales is recommended to invest in staff and consultants for digital transformation? I think this is a pretty broad question, so I'll just open it up to all three of you.
Well, I'll give a pretty broad answer then. So the way I've been looking at it, when we look at our IT technology spend, we looked at a couple of surveys from both Deloitte and Ernst & Young that for 2022, for our industry and companies our side, they believe the average spend on technology was going to be between 5 and 5.2% of revenue. So when we look at our budget and our numbers and what we're looking to achieve, we can reference against that benchmark to see where we feel we fit against that. That's not breaking it down by purely consultants, but that's just our overall technology budget. That's what we look at to see where do we feel the right place for us is against what the external parties believe the average is going to be.
Great. Okay, I'm going to go to the next question. Whoops, my question. Sorry. When determining your roadmap, do you go greenfield versus brownfield when you're moving to S4?
I guess I can take a first cut at that. Having spent the last few years just dealing with that question from different organizations all over the place, and the answer is that depends entirely on your view of your investment to date. If you are considering a brownfield implementation, you're basically saying, I spent a lot of money to get my systems to this point. I would like to get some further return on that investment. I would like to bring a selected amount of that forward. And so, we're quite comfortable doing projects like that. It's about an even split in the SAP world of people bringing their existing investments forward versus doing greenfield. We've had other customers. Yeah, it's funny. Have conversation with customers who have said, I've got this SAP system. I've had it for 20 years. And I really want to continue to recoup my investment in that. And then you have other customers who say, I have this SAP investment. I've run it for 20 years. And they say, that thing doesn't owe me a dime. I'm going to start over with a clean sheet, best practices, and I'll move forward on that basis. And from an SAP point of view, we're fine either way. It is entirely, I think, the customer's preference with respect to their attitude to the investment they've already made.
I'll give a few thoughts from my previous pre-Spartan background. 20 years ago, one of the key selling points of SAP was that you could configure it and customize it to exactly match your business process. So back in the 90s, early 2000s, we would spend a lot of time customizing and tweaking SAP so that it exactly matched how the customer thought they wanted that particular part of their process to go. As we've gone through in time, we've realized that let's focus on the secret sauce and let's leverage best practice, leading practice, particularly for the back office functions wherever we can. What I've seen is a lot of companies, they've got this 20-year SAP system, but they've got themselves down some technology dead ends. They've got so much customization built in there that if they do the brownfield and just upgrade to S4, they bring all of that legacy baggage with them into the new system. Whereas if we look at greenfield, there's an opportunity to clean sheet, choose which bits of the history you want to bring forward, you need to bring forward, but you can leave 20 years ago's thinking behind and look at leveraging that out of the box leading best practice and modify our business processes to suit the system so we can try and gain that elusive value that we may not have realized with the heavily customized version.
Yeah, as a consulting partner, that's the number one reason we see. And I agree with Glenn, our experience is about 50%. And it's generally, as Stephen's described, they have, kind of painted themselves in a corner, perhaps. They're real believers now in kind of pushing the reset button, going to SAP best practices, SAP standards. Also, their business may have evolved where, as Stephen said, if they've customized it for a certain way they did business 20 years ago, and now they're not there anymore, right? They've gone down a different path, either markets or product innovation. What they've had to find workarounds for. So it really lends itself to, let's go greenfield. We've recouped our investment, and it makes sense now to reinvest in the new S/4HANA product rather than bring forward what we built over the last 20 odd years.
I would add this though, just in the spirit of the other comment about not being surprised. There's a free service from SAP again in this context. If you have to make that decision, do I do greenfield? Do I do brownfield? If you have an existing SAP system, is go in with your eyes open. There's a free service. It's called the readiness check, which is a scan of your system, which will tell you exactly how much custom code you have, how much of it is actually dark. It's amazing how much custom code is out there that people haven't used in years. And you're sitting there, awake all night worrying about custom code and migration when in fact nobody's using it. So we can not only tell you what's being used and what it isn't, but we'll tell you just how bad your migration would be, how big the effort would be. And you say, well, I've got 5,000 objects that are modified. Well, it looks like about 3,000 of those we can actually dispense with because they're not being used. And of the remaining 2,000, we can begin to break it down into exactly what the issues are, how many of them have been replaced by stock functionality, and so forth, how many of them are no longer relevant, and then how many of them actually require intervention, and what the nature of the interventions are. So you can start with a list of 5,000 very scary, vague things and get it down to say, there's 161 things that require manual intervention by a programmer, and know exactly where they are and what the effort would be to remediate them. So it's like the earlier answer, go in with your eyes open, don't get surprised, and there's a free service that lets you figure out exactly how big that particular breadbox is.
Great, thank you. I have another question. Knowing that manufacturing is its own unique animal, what are some of the challenges when implementing something like this?
I'll maybe let you guys go first. I have again, having been a manufacturer, I have some views, but I'll let you guys go ahead.
My background's in finance, so I started implementing SAP in the 90s as a FICO consultant. What I still see today is the power of SAP integration in manufacturing, particularly around costing and production planning, is amazing, right? The fact that the bombs and routings, it all helps you produce standard costs, you can measure production efficiency and so on. And we still see challenges with customers now that aren't as mature in terms of the use of standard costing and the use of an integrated approach to planning, production, and costing. So I think in every project that we've done, and prior to my days at Illumiti, an ERP implementation in manufacturing, that has particular challenges around the maturity of the customer, or their ability to adopt kind of a robust product costing, production planning solution, particularly in automotive, where margins are really, really thin, and measuring labor efficiency and productivity is really important. That was my first SAP project in the mid-90s, was in automotive. It really requires kind of a pulling folks forward into, believe it or not, a lot of this is still done in spreadsheets, right? Costing it, making inventory adjustments and cost of sales entries manually at month end. And that's a big kind of change management challenge for manufacturing companies.
Maybe I'll add my comment then about manufacturing. One of the hardest things that we have to do in a manufacturing company is just manage disruptions. We make these lovely plans that say, okay, here's everything that we're going to make. We're going to make all these things on this day, and they're going to all ship out on time, on cost. Like, there's not going to be any variance. That's our plan that we go in with. And what happens is the world happens to us. Disruptions happen to us. There's a vendor that's late because of unforeseen circumstances. There's a hurricane in Florida. There's a pandemic. There's the world happens. Machines go down unexpectedly. There's an unplanned downtime. There's unexpected spikes in demand, which you'd think would be good news, except it's disrupting all of your manufacturing planning you've done to this point. So all of these things cumulatively, I think what the kids in manufacturing call it is the bullwhip effect, where one small change is like a bullwhip. It goes in, and by the time it gets to the end of the bullwhip, which is usually in warehousing, by the way, Stephen, those guys will tell you, it makes such a noise, it actually breaks the speed of sound. That's why a bullwhip makes a noise like that, is that one little flick eventually will break the speed of sound. And we see that happening with flows of information as well. So the huge challenge in manufacturing ERP is discipline. You have to kind of stick with really good master data. If you have bad master data, you forget it. It's going to go sideways on you so fast you won't even believe it. So there's a discipline to maintaining master data. There's a discipline to maintaining your policies. You might be so tempted to rip up your production schedule and insert this one order just to get it out on time so you can be a hero. I promise you, once you start doing stuff like that, once you begin expediting, it is very, very hard to ever stop expediting. So, and the problem is we have a tool now where I could run MRP in less than a second for most businesses. And the temptation is to rerun the entire production plan like that all day, 6 or 7 different times a day with every bullwhip change that comes in. But what you're doing is causing your own form of disruption. You're making your vendors crazy by changing, requested dates on all these different purchase orders. And sometimes it's better just to be disciplined and say, within this fence, this is what we're sticking with, barring a major requirement. And we'll try not to be a disruption of our own.
Thank you, Glenn.
It's taking me back to some of my sleepless nights.
So we have no other questions from the audience. I think those were great questions. I'm going to just go around and just any final comments from Stephen, John, and then I'll end with Glenn.
I think just, Glenn, you twigged something there, talking data. Knowing what accurate data looks like is a key part of this journey, because the tool, SAP, is a big complex calculator and it works on the numbers and the data you feed into it. Having complete and accurate data and understanding and knowing what accurate data looks like is also part of the art of this, is key, because no matter how well the system's configured, if it's working on incorrect or incomplete data, you're not going to get the outcome you're looking for. And that's one of the ongoing challenges, is making sure we keep on top of that data and make sure that as the world keeps changing, new vendors, new customers, new products, how do we make sure that it stays accurate so that what gets spit out the far end of the machine is what we need it to be?
Yeah, I guess I could add some final remarks. I probably have a couple of major sets, and that is they're both actually not related to software, which is a weird thing for the software guy to be saying. And it goes to your point, Stephen, about data. It's not just the data. The data is critical, but it's the custodianship of that data. It's the ownership of it, and ultimately the success of the system is always, every single time, driven by the people who set it up and who operate it. And any project that fails to take those precious resources into account is you are dicing with the devil. You are taking real chances with the future of your business. So we really encourage people, certainly make your investment in software, make your investment in services, make your investment in the technology necessary to create a platform for things to happen, but don't forget about the organization change management. There is a plethora of amazing new functionality that is coming at us at a pace we've never seen before, as Stephen said earlier. And what it's coming at is your people. So I encourage customers to spend time, contemplate that. If you're doing digital transformation, it starts with people and ultimately it ends with people, because they are the ones that are going to carry you into the new vision that you have for the business. And then I think is probably my last remark is this notion of vision. This is really hard. What Stephen does is really hard to not only do the operations of an organization like Spartan or really anyone else in a comparable position, being to operate something like that, but to keep also one eye on the horizon. There is stuff coming which is just absolutely remarkable. You know, you use the word renaissance, Phil. I really do believe that. I think we are in the middle of a renaissance of ERP systems. The artificial intelligence examples, you know, it's really hard to keep one eye on 230 emerging use cases with robotic process automation and machine learning and so on. It is really hard to keep an eye on the innovation that we're doing, just re-engineering the core of the ERP itself. What we do in finance now is wildly different from what we did even 10 years ago. We have this notion of a universal journal and so on. We have a production method in manufacturing now, which is wildly different than in core MRP. It's all entirely demand driven, and it's new, it's emerging. It's really hard to keep up with all of this change, all of this stuff happening at once. So my advice is to partner with someone. And again, I'm big fans of my friends at Illumiti. I've known them for as long as I've been at SAP, technically longer since I hadn't crossed the threshold of the doorway yet when I first arrived. So partner with someone who can help you with that, help you with the visioning. Take time from every 18 months or so, revisit your plan and test it against what's coming down the pike, because it's not going to stop and it's going to continue to evolve, and you want to make sure you're in a position to take advantage of all of it.
Great, thank you, Glenn. John, any final comments?
I don't know that I can add any more to what the two gentlemen have said. Just to emphasize the point that Glenn made about change management, data and change management, or we see most projects struggle, and it's going to get more challenging, as Glenn said, as more options for technology change come quickly and impact the people. Don't underestimate stakeholder management, communication management, change impacts. You want your system to be adopted day one. You want your folks to be advocates for the new solution, and that's all about managing people's expectations and how they're impacted. So that's all I think add.
Yep, I agree with that.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody that has taken the time out from your busy schedules to be on this first of a three-part series. And I hope if you are a Canadian executive and would like to be part of the second version of this, The Power of the Cloud, that's going to be live at the Grand Okanagan Delta Resort out in Kelowna, British Columbia. So we are going to actually do this live and in person, but we will be sending it across Canada and North America. So I would love to have you. If you would like to, if you'd like to apply, please, we'll send something out to you. The third one will be on November 28th, and that is the power of insight and best practices. So I would like to thank, first of all, our panelists. Great job, wonderful. Thank you. And sorry if I threw some curveball questions at you, but you did a great job. And I also want to thank SAP and Illumiti for putting on this series, and we truly appreciate it. And again, we're from Engage Events and ETX Canada, and hopefully we'll see you very soon. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.